Okay, the topic I was most excited to talk to you about was the concept of taper. I get so many questions, whether it's from colleagues just genuinely curious or swim fans alike, of how you approach a taper. What is an athlete's regime in a taper? I say the word taper as if we all know what it means. So let's start out by saying, Byron, can you explain to us what taper even is?
Sure. I mean, it is the fine art of coaching is what a taper is. And basically, the easiest way to describe it is take a spring, any kind of a spring, like a spring inside a pen or whatever. And what you do is you train an athlete, and you're basically training by pushing that spring down, pushing that spring down, pushing that spring down. And then when we taper, we reduce the amount of work, and it's basically the equivalent of taking the pressure off the spring, and up it goes. And you know, there's lots of scientists that can explain all the physiological stuff that's happening in the muscles. Bottom line is the muscles just respond like, oh my God, I've got so much more energy now, and you've got more, and you can actually swim at a very high level. The difficulty is that if you go to too many meets and taper too often, then you're pushing the spring down, letting it go, pushing it down, letting it go, and you never get it down as far for that magic swim that Summer McIntosh had or whoever has. Or, and I've seen this once or twice, not often, all right? Americans had a superstar lady in the late 90s, and they didn't rest her for one competition for 18 months. They just bashed her and bashed her and bashed her. So then they pushed that spring down, and you know, if you keep a spring down for too long, it's got no more spring. So they pulled it off, and she went, all right? And it was unfortunate. They ruined her. And so you've got to be careful that you don't overtrain somebody.
Yeah.
But bottom line is you train real hard at a high level, and obviously the coaches all have different ways of doing it. But then when you taper, then you reduce that stress, and the body responds with fantastic response. Now the question becomes, how do you know when to taper? How long? That's the $1 million question. That's where the coach, I would argue, earns their money. You take a look at the meet, and you back it up from there. What do I want to do 1 week out? What do I want to do 2? What do I want to do 3? You don't really think about what you're going to do 4 months out. That's just kind of general hard training. But then the last little bit, and you could have 2 women that are swimming the same event, you and you know, Susie, and you may need a little bit less rest than Susie. And so a coach has got to know that. That's why I always tell anybody, if you're thinking of making a big change Olympic year and changing coaches, not a really good idea. No. The coach needs to get to learn you, and the athlete obviously needs to learn the coach and give them feedback and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, it was a great explanation. Thank you. It just made me think about, I was listening to a Bob Bowman interview earlier, I think it was yesterday or the day before, and he was talking about Hubie Koch, who's an Olympic champion. His first year in his program, he said, I will take all accountability. I did really mess up his taper, but it takes, he said, he's like, and this year we nailed it. Like it does take a little bit of time to figure things out.
Everybody's different.
And it, like you said, 2 athletes that swim the same event do things very differently. But the process of tapering, like you explained, is to give rest to the athletes so that they're allowed to reach maximum peak performance potential. Now, for a sprint event, that looks different than a distance race. How so?
Well, it's you need to be down to 100th of a second, or et cetera, right? And they're just basically the sprint events take more muscle. So usually, historically, those guys are more, those women or men are stronger. They've been doing more weights, et cetera, et cetera. And for that reason, the muscles are bigger, stronger, whatever. Bigger muscles need more rest. It's as simple as that. And the distance swimmers that swim 4 minutes, 8 minutes, 15 minutes, they're doing a lot more training that's recovery-based. Like, in other words, it's more, well, we call it aerobic training. And that means the muscles aren't quite as taxed at the same level. It's more working on your heart, et cetera. And therefore, you don't need nearly as much rest. And some of the best
Which is the most unfortunate thing in the world. Who let that happen?
When we're in the workout or something, and we're in the taper process, some more than others, and I'll say, okay, the sprinters here, you guys are doing this, and then you're going to be done. And the milers over here, we call them milers because that's the longest event other than the open water. And I say, okay, yeah, well, you guys are doing this, and then you're doing this, and then you're doing this. And they look and they go, well, that's unfair. And I said, blame your parents. All right, it's genetic. It is 100% genetic. You were born with what's called slow twitch fiber, which means you can't really go crazy, go fast. I could take an athlete and sprint the living bejesus out of him all year, and if they don't have the right genes, it's going to be a waste of my time and theirs.
So I shouldn't make a comeback for LA in the sprint 50s.
No, you will. You'll bomb, Britt. Right? Okay. So and it's very interesting because you can do all these tests, and there was a period in the 80s where people were doing muscle biopsies, pulling the muscles out and looking at the striations of the muscles to see what percentage was slow twitch, fast twitch fibers, and it kind of boiled down to that's good, but you basically could almost do what's called a standing broad jump or a standing vertical jump and see how high you can go. And those that can do the highest, like I think somebody said the the world record of the best people in the world do like 40 or 42 inches, I believe.
Wow.
All right, and that's those are like volleyball players, Michael Jordan, basketball player, like those kind of people, high jumpers probably. But we did it on our team this year, last year, and it's pretty amazing. Sprinters were here.
Wow.
Distance guys could go. They barely got their feet off the ground.
So is that basically their ticket? If you want to get in the sprint lane, you have to be able to jump a certain height, and I'll let you in.
You got to jump high.
Okay, and how do we bring the shave down element into this? Because I was an athlete that I only shaved down when I was like fully tapered. Like I went to my high school prom with, I'll be honest, hairy legs all the way down.
In a long dress.
In a very long dress. But it was really important to me. It was a lot about the feeling.
Yep.
So tell me a bit about the process of shaving down. Do you have a specific outlook when it comes to an athlete's recommendation?
Yeah. So for those that aren't aware, I think most people watching this are swimming people, so they would. But for those that aren't, it's a process of literally shaving all the hair off your body, and it started in, I'll give you a little history perspective.
Not in 1970.
Yeah. Well, no, we did. Well, not the hair, though. Everywhere else, all right, And it started in '56 at the Olympics in Australia. And John Conrad's the big Australian superstar, was very, you've known gentlemen that are very hairy, all right? And he was. And the father said, my God, that's slowing you down, son. All right, I work with boats, and we always go under the keel of the boat, and we scrape the barnacles and everything off. He said, I think you should shave that hair off you, and you'll go a lot faster. He went to the Olympic trials in Australia, hammered the world record, beat everybody. And then all of a sudden, the other Aussies went, whoa.
Yeah.
So they all did it. Well, the rest of the world didn't know about it. There was no internet back then. So they went to the Australian Olympics in '56, and they killed everybody. So then all of a sudden, everybody in the world said, hey, we're going to shave down. What ends up happening is, in my simple analysis, you expose all the nerve endings because you've now ripped off a layer of skin, obviously. So then when you dive in the water, you have, in essence, more nerves that are feeling more of the water. It feels like you're going faster through the water because you're feeling more of the water with your body, with all those nerve endings. So you feel like, the best example is a hot knife going through butter. It just feels like amazing when you hit the water. So you don't want to lose that feel by doing it every week. So you just save it for the very biggest meet of the year. Now there may be 3 meets a year, there may be 4 meets a year, but usually it's just 1 or 2.
Okay.
And you save it for those.
Yeah. That was how I did it. But then I went to the Olympics and I was asking some people, and some of the girls were like, no, we shave down like regularly. I'm like, what?
Well, I think
it's a personal preference.
Well, and there's a little societal implications there too.
Not everyone's going to prom with hair all over their legs,
right.
but you know who did? Brittany MacLean.
I know.
You know who did?
Yeah.
Okay, quickly on that.
And cyclists shave their legs all the time, male and female, because there's the whole different ballgame. It's not to go fast. It's because they know eventually one day they're wiping out. Yeah. And then if it was hair, then it was hard to get all the stones and grit and stuff out of their legs. So, there are reasons you do different things. So.
Okay.